Okay, this book gets a 6 out of 10 from me. This book is called Economics and World History, Myths and Paradoxes, and it's by Bairoch. If you are interested in learning more about tariffs, protectionism, free trade, this might be a good book to consider reading. He spends much of the book attempting to dispel the notion that free trade, tariff-free trade, is responsible for economic growth. He argues that this is a myth, and that actually in the 18th and 19th centuries, tariffs and protectionism were normal, and that it was only when Britain reached a highly developed stage of advancement with regards to its manufacturing that it advocated and switched to a policy of free trade. So he argues that most countries, over a broad sweep of history, imposed tariffs in order to protect their own industries, their own economy from competition, and that in Britain, for example, the landed gentry, the landowning class, wanted the Corn Laws, for example, to remain in place. This is in the early part of the 19th century, because the Corn Laws put tariffs on wheat imports, thus artificially raising the price of wheat. But as people moved to the city, and as the industrial base of Britain, the number of people employed in cities like Manchester, Birmingham increased, the power shifted towards the industrialists and the capitalists in the city, and they wanted free trade. They wanted to get rid of the Corn Laws because it would bring down the cost of food. It would bring down the cost of wheat, because Britain could then import wheat from the United States, for example, and it would be much cheaper. And employers, people who owned factories, wanted this because, in effect, it would result in higher wages, because what people could buy with their money, if the cost of living is cheaper, and people could eat more, they would be more satisfied with their wages that they were getting from the company that they worked for. So business, the industrialists were in favour of abolishing the Corn Laws, whereas the landed gentry were more in favour because it provided protection directly to their traditional way of life, producing wheat in Britain. So you can learn more about the reformist movement and the Chartists by looking at various topics discussed in this book. It's quite an interesting time period, and I think that if one understands the Corn Laws and what was going on in Britain in the early part of the 19th century, a large part of economics in the world today will make more sense, because we can sometimes think that tariffs have recently been on the news. The United States is imposing or attempted to impose tariffs on different countries in order to address a trading deficit. But this has been the norm, according to Bairoch, over the last 300 years. So he attempts to dispel dogma and what he considers to be false beliefs regarding various economic matters. And the one regarding protectionism versus free trade is one that's given quite a lot of time and introspection in this book. So it's a good book, contains lots of statistics. He tries to back up his arguments by using actual data that he has been able to get regarding productivity in the United States, in Western Europe, in Canada as well, and is quite an interesting book. I think his approach, which is to try to disprove current way of thinking, or try to disprove a theory, I think this is also a useful tool. This is a useful way of analysing a situation, is to consider, why is this wrong? How could this be wrong? And if you keep doing that to lots of different ideas, generally the strength of your opinions based on analysis of multiple viewpoints should hopefully improve. So I liked the style and the approach that he took when looking at broad sweep of history, and the subject matter itself is interesting, is useful to understand, because it speaks to not only economics but society, what was going on in Britain in the 19th century, different interests wanted different things, and conflict, politics, all comes into play when discussing economics. So it's a decent book. As I've said, I'd give this a 6 out of 10. Might be worth checking out. Thank you very much.